Tuesday. I hope that everyone's doing well. We are just going to begin with some, regularly scheduled announcements. Real quick. Welcome to week 8. Announcements. Again, reminder, membership dues, $30 for the whole year. Deadline November 8th. That's coming up in about a month. Little less than a month. It's like 3 weeks away. Anyway, if you have any questions or like trouble paying or you need any more info, feel free to contact Joanna Liang. There is, you can contact her on Discord or shoot her an email. And something very exciting is coming up. We have the Halloween social. It's going to be Thursday, the 27th. So not this week, but next week. It's going to be like a potluck costume party. Costumes are mandatory. I'm just kidding. I love a good theme. So if you want to wear a costume, please do so. I probably will. It's going to be behind Building 1. I don't know if you guys know campus very well, but there's Building 1 is like that white building, kind of half brick. There's a really cute like greenery area. There's some tables, seating area behind it. So it's a great place to kind of chill, hang out, have this social. So very fun. Costume contest. And yeah, starting at 5 p.m. So hopefully everyone is done with classes at that time and can join us. But yeah, very exciting. And attendance, of course. So I will pause here, let the people in person scan the QR code. I will also drop the link to attendance down in the chat. See. Hold on. So for the people online, there's the link for the attendance sheet. So make sure you get on that. Attendance for today, get your membership points. And Christian, let me know when I can move on.
We're good to go.
All righty. Happy birthday, Christian. It's Christian's birthday today. Okay, Christian, it's your turn. You got to share us how old you're turning and your zodiac sign. Go.
21. No, 21. And I'm a Libra, so I'm indecisive and don't know how to make decisions for myself.
There we go. 21. Do you have any plans this weekend? What are you doing?
So I wasn't gonna do anything today, but a staff meeting I had got canceled. So I'm gonna be a menace.
Yeah. Gonna be a menace. Hopefully you're not on duty tonight or tomorrow.
Oh no, I'm not.
Okay, good. But yeah, live it up. You can legally drink now. So there we go. I'm not gonna repeat what someone said. Alrighty. So we have Dr. P here, Dr. Pumaccahua. She is going to share a little bit about her educational journey. I'm going to stop sharing and give her permissions to do so. So take it away, Dr. P.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Let me share my screen. Let's see. Let me know if you can see it. Let me make this a little bit bigger.
Yes, we can.
Perfect. Yes. So hi, everyone. Sorry I can't be there in person, but I'm here virtually. And it's nice. It's kind of like a nice full circle. I did this presentation when I just got hired 2 years ago. And in a way, I feel like I'm having my first year at work because it's my first semester like fully being in person. Well, today I'm not in person, but I'm teaching in person. So it's really nice. I was updating the presentation and I'm like, oh, exactly like almost 2 years ago, I did the same presentation. Okay, so as Sydney said, today I want to share a little bit about a couple of things. A little bit about my educational trajectory through higher ed, also some suggestions on how you can navigate academic spaces. And if you're interested in going to graduate school, specifically PhD programs, I want to share some suggestions about that as well. And today I'm also opening up the application for my research lab. So I'll talk a little bit more about what my lab is about, how you can apply, and just a little bit more information and answer any questions as well. Okay, so a little bit about me, and I put some pictures here as well too. So I am a first generation student, very proud to also be a product of the Cal State. I did my undergrad at Cal State San Bernardino, so pretty close by. And I actually stayed there for my master's in child development there as well. And honestly, I'm gonna talk a little bit more about Cal State San Bernardino throughout my presentation, because the experience that I had there really motivated and shaped my interest in pursuing a graduate education. I met some wonderful professors there that really opened up my eyes to like all the things that are available for me in higher education. And it was just a really positive experience. So I'm very grateful that I went to that school. And after I completed my master's at Cal State San Bernardino, I decided to apply for doctorate programs. And I ended up doing my PhD in school psychology at the University of Rhode Island, so very far away. But even though my PhD is in school psychology, a lot of my training in the program and even after the program was a little bit of a mix of school psychology and clinical child psychology. So I consider myself kind of like a school clinical hybrid because I had kind of like both trainings. Also a little bit about my background. I was born in Peru, in Lima, Peru. Very proud to be Peruvian, indigenous. And I immigrated here to the US when I was 12. And as I was mentioning earlier, I got hired at CPP as a tenure track faculty back in 2020. So it was like the middle of the pandemic. I had like no experience before then teaching through Zoom. I had only taught in person before. So it was a very interesting experience going through all of that, but I'm definitely happy that, now I'm getting to experience campus and teaching in person. It's just really nice. Other things about myself, I really love Halloween. So I was so excited to see that you all are going to have a Halloween social coming up. I put a picture in here of my, don't judge me, but I took my Christmas tree out and I made it into a Halloween tree. So I have a picture of it there. I have a little skeleton ornaments, as well as little pumpkin ornaments as well. But yeah, I really love Halloween. It's like my favorite time of the year. I also love solo trips, going out in nature, hiking, all of that is very interesting to me. I love concerts. I have a picture of a concert that I recently went to over there. And I also love, just in general, working with kids. I love puppets. If you ever visit my office, you'll see that I have a bunch of puppets there. And I have a picture of me and a puppet when I was working at Children's Hospital LA. And yeah, I just really am passionate about children's mental health and family health as well. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about my academic journey, like how I got interested in psychology, or like how I found my place in psychology and how I eventually got started in research. So at first, when I started Cal State San Bernardino, I was undeclared. I knew I liked psychology. In high school, I took AP Psych, and it was really interesting. But I didn't know yet if psychology was going to be for me. So I was undeclared for a little bit, just kind of exploring my options. And then I'm like, I think I'm going to go with psychology, but I'm also interested in criminal justice. So for a little bit, I was double major in criminal justice and psychology as well. But then, I don't know, criminal justice just wasn't, I liked some of the classes, but not everything was clicking. So I decided just to focus on psychology. And at one point, I don't know where I heard it. Maybe I heard it in passing or in a class, but I was trying to figure out a little bit more about like, okay, what do I do with my degree in psychology? Like, if I want to be a psychologist, what is it that I exactly need to do? Like, do I need to get a master's? Do I need to get a doctorate? What is a doctorate? Being first gen, I didn't know any of this. I wasn't sure what grad school entail or how you get into grad school. So I did what most people do, which is use the internet to find out a little bit of what is grad school, how do I get into grad school, what do I have to do to become a psychologist. And as I was searching online, I found out like the thing that kept popping up was the importance of getting research experience, especially if you want to go into a PhD program, which is what you would need to become a licensed psychologist. So as I was like learning about that, I was like, okay, research experience, like how do I go about doing that? And I'm probably aging myself here, but back then, when I was in college, MySpace was still a thing. So I was like, I don't know, I guess I'm gonna go to MySpace and I'm gonna put in the search bar, psychology professor CSU research. And what came up was the profile of, still remember this, the profile of who was eventually going to be my mentor, Dr. Kaufman. And Dr. James Kaufman, he was so nice. Like I sent him a message through MySpace and he responded and he's like, he was so friendly. He's like, make an office hour meeting with me. And I met with him. I was a little bit intimidated. I'm like, I don't really go to office hours to talk to professors. This is kind of intimidating, but he seems nice. He responded to my MySpace message. So, he's friendly. So I met with him and it was really, I don't know, I felt very comfortable with him. And as I was getting to know him more, he offered a position in his research lab. And I had an awesome experience with him. Like he gave me so many opportunities, like opportunities to like write, opportunities to like lead different research projects. And honestly, he was probably like the first person in all of academia or even in all of school that really told me like, I see your potential, I believe in you, you're very capable, like keep on going. And I think like hearing that, I had not heard that before. And hearing that like really made me kind of like start believing in myself. And I was like, okay, like maybe I'm gonna keep going. So it was a really nice experience and it kind of like really motivated me to want to continue on to eventually get my PhD. Okay, so let me keep on going. Yeah, so my next slide, I'm kind of like talking about the importance of mentorship and finding out a little bit more about your department and your university. It's so huge that you select a good mentor. And by good mentor, I see it as a person that truly believes in your potential. So as I was mentioning, having Dr. Kaufman on my side really helped me out. Also selecting a lab, if you're interested in research experience, finding a research lab that kind of fits with your interests. As some of you, well, as you guys know, for being in Psych-I, we've had different presentations of the different faculty members that just recently got hired, and they all have their research labs. So seeing, what is it that you're interested in, how you're vibing with that professor too. I feel like all those factors play an important role in, finding the right fit for your who's going to be your mentor and finding the right lab as well. Something that helped me out when I was at Cal State San Bernardino was getting to know my university. So I was originally in EOP. I don't know if some of you are in EOP as well. EOP was a great program that really helped me out. I know that we have EOP here at Cal Poly as well. We have the McNair program over there, and we also have it here. And the McNair program, I think that you all are going to have a presentation on McNair coming up, I think in a couple of weeks. But McNair is an awesome program. I was part of that, and it helped me out financially, like with conducting research. And when it was time to apply to graduate school, they had a lot of fee waivers for applications, which saved a lot of money because applications can get expensive. So just really getting to know your university, trying to see, you know, what programs are out there. And honestly, like I didn't know about any of these programs, and it was a matter of like me sometimes stopping by the office of these programs, or if I heard about it somewhere, just asking more questions about it or Googling it. And, you know, it doesn't hurt to apply. So that's what I did. I would just apply, and I'm like, well, worst thing that can happen is they say no, and that's okay. They can also say yes, and then I get another opportunity. So those are some suggestions. Let's see. Okay, so a little bit more in detail, kind of like my educational trajectory. So as I mentioned, I stayed at Cal State San Bernardino for my master's, which was in child development. That actually was not my original plan. Originally, I got my BA and I applied to PhD programs. And I actually applied to PhD programs in clinical psychology, and I didn't get any interviews. So I got rejected on my first try, and I was really bummed about it. But I was like, you know, maybe things happen sometimes for a reason. I'm going to keep trying, but maybe in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and pursue my master's. So that's what led me to stay at Cal State San Bernardino for my master's. And then I reapplied many years later. Well, not many years later, 2 years later, I reapplied to PhD programs, and that's when I got in. So I stayed at Cal State San Bernardino, and then I applied to a bunch of places all over the US, and I ended up going to the University of Rhode Island, and that's where I got my school psychology doctorate. And what I did over there, because I always knew, like, I'm interested in children, I'm interested in school, but I also want to do like clinical work, or like I'm interested kind of like in clinical child psychology as well. So a lot of, when you're in a doctorate program, you can pick some of your practicums, which are like applied internship experiences that you do every year. So I picked a lot of my practicums to be a little bit more clinically based. That way I'm able to kind of have the experience of working in a school, but I also know how it's like to work in a child inpatient unit, or, you know, some other kind of hospital. So I like having that ability to like being able to work anywhere. So I'm happy that I kind of, even though the program was not designed to be hybrid, I kind of just tried to find different ways to make it a little bit more clinically oriented. And actually, let me backtrack a little bit. I didn't talk about how I got into wanting to work with children, because actually before, even though I was interested in psychology, I thought that I wanted to more like with adults and doing more of that. And it wasn't until my first job doing ABA work that I realized, I was actually, when I applied for my ABA job, I was a little bit terrified. I was like, oh my God, I don't know if I like working with kids. Am I going to be good with kids? I'm not sure. But I needed a job that pays and is psychology related. So I went for it. And honestly, it was through that job that I realized, like, wow, I actually enjoy working with children. I enjoy working with families, being able to see that how much of an impact that you can make, you know, when you're working with the family there, you know, teaching them skills, helping them connect. I didn't realize like that brought me a lot of joy. And it was that job that really kind of like drove me to like look into other options that I can do working with children, which was what eventually led me to school psychology. So, you know, sometimes, you know, trying different things out, even if you think that you might not like it, it might make you realize something about yourself. And now, you know, that is what I specialize on, children. I actually don't really see myself like working with adults as much, mainly like children and families, which I guess parents are adults, but yeah, like I wouldn't have realized that about myself until I had that job. So after you get your doctorate, you have this option of doing a little bit of additional training through a postdoctoral fellowship. So I looked at different postdocs, but I knew that, you know, I didn't want to stay in the East Coast. My hometown has always been, you know, the Inland Empire, LA. And I wanted to go back to California. So I ended up applying to Children's Hospital LA. They had a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship, and I got it. And it was one of the best decisions I made because I really enjoyed it there. It was a really fun and insightful experience. I got to work with a lot of families that were in medical, so they were underserved from low socioeconomic backgrounds. I got to do therapy in Spanish, which I was very excited about. And a lot of what I was doing there was doing individual child therapy, family therapy, parenting groups, and going to schools to kind of like do observations and assessments. So it was a really, really nice experience. So after that, I had this dilemma of what do I do next? I knew that I was really passionate about mentoring students, and I had taught before, like while I was in grad school, and I enjoyed it as well. But there's also this thing about academia that I was like, there's some schools that can be a little bit toxic in academia. So for me, I was a little bit nervous about that. I was like, if I do become a professor, it has to be at the right university, it has to be an environment that is positive, not toxic. And ideally, I wanted to go back to the Cal State because I'm a product of the Cal State. And if it wasn't going to be academia, my other option was doing clinical work. But I was in postdoc, and I ended up looking at my email, and I saw that they had a job listing for Cal Poly Pomona. And I was like, maybe it's too early to apply, but I should just give it a try. I know sometimes people wait until like they've been many years in doing clinical work to apply, but I was like, let me just apply. And I ended up getting it. And it was one of the best decisions I made because I'm really happy here at Cal Poly. And I have here in the future what I'm planning to do. So I want to stay at Cal Poly, but I also want to open up my private practice. Ideally, I would love to go back to doing a little bit more therapy with children, families, as well as doing consultations with schools. I got to do a little bit of that last year with Pomona Unified School District, helping them set up a social emotional learning program for their district. And I enjoyed that a lot. So that's kind of like my future aspiration, to be able to continue as CPP, but also to be able to do a little bit of clinical work through my private practice. So that's a little bit about my my path, and what I always tell students is like, don't be afraid of rejection. Like, I didn't get into grad school the first time, but that's okay, then you try again. And if not, you keep trying until you get it. So that is a little bit of my story. Okay, so let's see. So there's many different, if you're interested in working with children, you're probably wondering like, okay, what path do I take? Like, is there like a specific path I need to take? Do I need to go into a school psychology PhD program or a master's program, or does it even have to be in school psychology? So I can talk about all of this for like an hour, but I'll just give you kind of like the short version. So there's many different ways that you can go in order to be able to work with children. So yes, you can go ahead and get your doctorate in school psychology if you want. You can also, do kind of like what I did and make it a little bit clinically hybrid if you're interested in more like, if you're kind of like interested in clinical and school. But also you can get a master's in school psychology. And I should probably talk a little bit about what school psychologists do and kind of like what are the pros of having a master's in school psychology versus having a doctorate in school psychology. So school psychologists work in schools and in different states, depending on what state you're in, school psychologists are used in different ways. So for example, when I worked for 1 year in Dallas in their schools, and they use school psychologists there mainly as therapists. So I was doing a lot of like school-based mental health and everything, those kind of things. But in California, a lot of what school psychologists do is do assessments. So if a child is suspected of a learning disability or a mental health concern that is impacting their progress in school, the school psychologist will do an assessment to determine, if there's a disability and if there needs to be a individualized education plan that needs to be put in place in order to support that student in school. So that's a lot of what school psychologists in California do when they work in the schools. Other things that you can do as a school psychologist in schools is provide consultation to teachers. So if teachers are having concerns with issues, behavioral issues, or anything in their classroom, you can support them. You can give them suggestions on how to improve the climate of their classroom or behavioral concerns. You're also kind of like the mental health person in the school. So if you want to be able to provide more information, for example, about trauma or trauma-informed practices, you can do a workshop for the whole school. So there's many different things that you can do as a school psychologist. You can do prevention programs for the whole school or the whole district. But a lot of what you'll be doing if you're a school psychologist in California is definitely a lot of that assessment piece. There are other options that you could like maybe go to, what is it? Not an alternative school. I'm blanking on the name. It's the schools that are public, but they do their own thing. I'm blanking on the name, but there are other types of schools that you can get a school psych job there and do a little bit more clinical or like more therapy rather than assessment. So if you get a master's in school psychology, the one pro is that you get paid the same with a master's or a PhD if you work in the school. So it doesn't really matter your type of degree that you get if you become a school psychologist working in the schools. However, with a school psychology master's, you're kind of restricted to only working in the school setting. With a school psychology doctorate, with a PhD, you can work in a school if you want. You can work at a hospital if you want, or you can have your private practice. So you have a little bit more flexibility of the setting that you can work at. And also, if you're interested in becoming a licensed psychologist in California, that licensed psychologist is only kind of open to folks that have a doctorate in psychology. So you have that ability to be able to apply for licensure in psychology as a school psychology doctorate recipient. But it's kind of like, just asking yourself kind of like, what is my end goal? If I do want to work in schools primarily, then a master's is kind of like the good route or the best route. But there are other options too. I have seen folks that have gotten their marriage and family therapy masters, and then they end up working in the schools. You can also get a master's in school and guidance counseling and be able to work in schools as well with children. You can also get a clinical PhD or PsyD with an emphasis on child mental health. There are certain programs that do have that subspecialty, and that would allow you to work with children in schools, or well, a lot more clinical psychologists work in hospitals. And also you can go into social work and be able to work with kids that way. So there's many different routes, and I haven't checked the chat. Let me see, I see some things in here. Yeah, charter. Thank you guys. That's what I was thinking. So you can apply to a public school or a charter school in order to be a school psychologist. And sometimes charters have a little bit more flexibility in terms of not doing as much assessment and doing a little bit more kind of like therapy, school-based mental health related things as a school psychologist. Yeah. Thank you all. Okay, so let me keep on moving on. Let me check the time too. We still have time. Yeah, so as I was mentioning, like my major takeaways for you, my major suggestions, picking a mentor that
Can you
really be.
something real quick? This, what is that?
Sorry, give me 1 second.
No worries.
Oh, Sherry, is that what she said?
Sometimes that happens, no worries. But as I was saying, picking a mentor that really believes in you, you can tell when someone is really invested in you and your academic progress. So I feel like that is what really made a difference with me, having Dr. Kaufman really tell me like, hey, I believe in you. here, help me write this paper, lead this research project. Like having someone have that much confidence in me, I was like, oh man, if he believes in me, I gotta believe in myself too. Like I was mentioning too, picking a research lab that really aligns with your values, with your interest, getting to know your university, being involved, like all of you being involved in Saikai, that's great because you're gonna get to hear about many different things, opportunities that are here available at CPP and outside of CPP. And I always tell students, just apply, like the worst that can happen is they say no, but they can also say yes, and opportunities can open up. And also realize your strengths, like what do you bring to the table. I like to show students this community cultural wealth model. This was written by a Chicana scholar at UCLA, or this was conceptualized by a Chicana scholar at UCLA. And it's thinking about if, for example, many of us, right, have grown up maybe being translators for our parents, right? And she would say that is linguistic capital, being able to be bilingual or trilingual, being able to navigate things like that, like translation, doing paperwork for your parents, when you're little, navigating systems like that. It's a skill. Your aspirations, your dream, that is a capital too, So being able to kind of like recognize all your different strengths and what you bring to the table is so important. Because we all have a lot to give, a lot to provide. Okay, so I want to be mindful of the time. I know that we only have a little bit of time left, and I want to leave some time for questions. But I also want to talk about my lab and my research. So there's many different things that we do in lab, but I would say that broadly, we're really interested in supporting the mental health of students. And these are students not only in K through 12, but also beyond that. We're also interested in the mental health of college students, so higher education as well. And a lot of what we focus on is social emotional learning. And social emotional learning is really like, how do we teach empathy, for example, to kids, or even to college students, how do we teach them to have self-awareness, to have better decision-making skills, to be able to build community with others, to have good intrapersonal and interpersonal skills. So that is what social emotional learning is about, and it's something that is very relevant when kids are little, but also as we keep going and developing, that also is an important factor to know about and keep growing on. We're also really focused on school-based mental health, and we have currently 2 projects. So we have a project that we started last year that we're kind of like wrapping up, and that project focused on how do social emotional programs that are available in K through 12, how have they integrated social justice into their curriculum? So we have kind of wrapped up that project, but right now we're working on the publication for that. And then we're starting a brand new study right now, focusing on how social emotional learning looks like in higher education. So how do we cultivate spaces in higher education that helps to support students' mental health, their confidence, builds community, and helps them feel emotionally safe. So we're really interested in that. And another thing that that we value in the lab is having kind of like a scholar activist approach. And by that, I mean that we do research, but we're also interested in giving back to the community. And we currently do that by having a partnership with Pomona Unified School District. So all the lab members, they complete a applied internship with Pomona Unified School District in their mental health department, doing school-based mental health related stuff. So they're paired up with a supervisor at Pomona Unified, and they get to shadow them, they get to go on crisis calls, they get to have like their own caseload of students that they're supporting. I mean, you do that all with the support of a supervisor as well as my support, but definitely, you get more of that applied experience. And they do, all the lab members do about 8 to 10 hours weekly at Pomona Unified. It is a lot of work, but from what the students have told me, they have really enjoyed, all of them, all the students in my lab, they do have that aspiration of working with children and families later on. So being able to get that experience as an undergraduate is something that they have found to be beneficial, to see what it's like to really work in a school, how to manage everything that happens in a school. Because if you think about it, before, like, you see everything in a school setting, before a kid, is seeking therapy at a community mental health site, or even if a kid is in an inpatient mental health facility, all of that, all those kids, are at schools first. So you get to see all kinds of things in schools. So it's a really good place to be able to learn how to think on your feet and how to manage different situations and crises. All right, so let me show you the flyer. There's a lot of different things to mention there, but I'm just gonna show you the flyer because that's gonna be easier. And if you wanna, I also have a lab website. I'm gonna put it here in the chat. And I'm gonna, let me know if you can see this. Can you see this website?
Yes, we can.
Cool, thank you. So if you go here to join our team, you can kind of go through all the tabs to learn a little bit more about, our research or partnerships. But if you go to join our team, there's gonna be the application. So we have an application, but let's go ahead and look at the flyer. Is the flyer showing as well, Sydney?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, okay, cool. So you can read a little bit more about it, but here are the kind of some of the, what we're looking for. You don't need any prior research experience. We welcome everyone. You do have to be passionate, about children and families. And ideally, this lab would be best suited for those that, are planning to pursue a graduate degree, either in school psychology or in clinical psychology or counseling psychology, with an emphasis in working with children and families. We do require a 1-year minimum time, commitment. So if you have at least 2 semesters left at Cal Poly, definitely consider applying. And another thing that we really value in lab is that many of the students that are in lab are also first generation. So I see it very important for me not to just do the applied piece, not just to do the research piece, but also to provide a lot of professional development. So by that, I mean, talking about things like CV. What is a CV? How do you write one? How do you look for different graduate programs? How do you, when you're applied to different programs, how do you do a graduate interview? So just different aspects of professional development. That's something that we also talk about in our lab. And I meet with all my mentees, at least one-on-one a couple of times a semester. And we also like to do some socials. So for example, this Friday, we're gonna have our fall celebration, which is a Halloween themed celebration. Of course, I love Halloween, so we needed to do something Halloween related. And we're gonna do a little gift exchange that is Halloween related, something it had to be spooky gifts. So we're gonna do kind of a white elephant situation, but for Halloween. So that is a little bit about the lab. You can definitely read more about it. If you're interested, definitely I encourage you to apply. We're gonna have the applications open starting today, and the due date for them is November 4th by 11:59 p.m. And with that said, I am on time, 12:40. So I have, I think, 5 minutes left for any questions that you all have. And also, another thing that I forgot to mention, let me just wrap up really quickly, is if you have any questions about the lab, but also, you're like, hey, I would like to talk more, Dr. P, and just learn more about graduate school, and can I go to your office hours? So definitely, you don't have to be a student in my class to go to my office hours. My office hours are open to any student at CPP, and we can talk about, career stuff, graduate school, anything you like. So if you're interested in making an appointment for office hours, I have here my Calendly. And you can just kind of automatically make an appointment through there for a time that works for you. And I'm gonna put it here in the chat, and I put also my lab website there. Oh, and let me put my email too. There you go. And I'm gonna send the flyer to Sydney after this meeting. And I know that she was gonna post it in Discord and other, I think also in the Instagram. But yeah, thank you all for listening. And now I'm open for 4 minutes for any questions that you all have or anything that I can be of support of.
Do we have any questions in person for Dr. Pumaccahua? I think I see one maybe.
Can we be a part of 2 labs?
Yeah, that's a great question. We currently have one lab member, Joanna, who is also part of Psychi. She's currently into lab, so it's possible, but definitely I would consider, kind of like, your time, like, not to like extend yourself too much, but if you feel that it works with your schedule, that's definitely still possible. Yeah, good question.
Yeah,
Other
just
questions, other
make
things
sure you
you
have the
want
time
to-
for that.
Yeah, yeah. Like I feel like we're all very hardworking, but I'm very like motivated, but definitely, have time for yourself too. So if you feel like, like, hey, I can manage both labs and everything and still have time for myself, then go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, and to build on that, if you're a senior as well and you're doing senior project, that also takes a lot of time. So like research is almost like a second job.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does anyone else have any questions?
You can open it up to the people on Zoom as well. If you have anything you want to add in the chat, you can unmute yourself. We can get a question from your pretty little voice.
I have a question.
Yeah, question,
oh.
go for it.
So how would you recommend people to like find a research interest or like discover, something like that?
Excellent question. Yeah, I really think, thinking about what is it that you always been curious about and that you wouldn't mind learning more about, reading about. I was talking about this with Sydney the other day, like, oh, another student too, Crystal. I was talking to Crystal Gary. She's the president of Hermanas Unidas. We were talking about like her interest, on relationships, and that's something that kept coming up. Like she's just really interested in that. So thinking about something that truly you wouldn't mind reading things on, you wouldn't mind learning more about, because I mean, we're all curious people, we're in college, but there's some things that we would be learning more about than others. Like for me, anything related to school-based mental health, like I get really excited and I'm like, oh, I want to read this, With some other things like, I don't know, cognitive neuroscience, it's really interesting too, don't get me wrong. I have enjoyed my cognitive neuroscience class, but do I want to spend like more than 10 hours reading articles on that? Some people do, and that's great. But for me, I'm like, I don't know if I do, So kind of like finding like something that truly you've been curious about, that you're interested on. And also trying out different labs or different classes can also be a really good avenue to kind of like discover some of your interests. When you take a class in a subject, you're like, I'm really into this class, or I'm really not into this subject. And ultimately, you can also be part of a lab and then discover like, I really love this, or maybe this is not really for me. That can also be good information that you can get by trying different things out. Yeah, awesome question. Yeah, Sydney also put here in the chat, talk with professors too. I see what led them to the research interest. Yes, that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people talk about their life experience, and what kind of their process was in their life and wanting to know more about it, the specific struggles that they had or things around them that have influenced like them just wanting to know more about it. That was a really great question, Joanne.
Yeah, that's a really good question.
But yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of cutting it close on time,
Yeah.
but Thank you so much for being here, Dr.
Alright.
Pumaccahua. Anyone feel free to reach out. She is also, the psychi advisor, so she's
Yay.
around, she's available.
Yeah, and if you're on campus, I'm there Monday, Wednesday. My office is the one with the pumpkin, so you might see it actually on your. It's in building 5, so yeah. Yeah, thank you all for having me, and feel free to reach out with any questions. I'm happy to help. Bye,
Thank you
everyone.
so much,
Thank
everyone.
you, Dr. P. Really appreciate it.